There was also a Georgi I, Catholicos of Kartli, who ruled in 677 to 678. Georgi I, of the House of Bagrationi, was the king of Georgia from 1014 until his death in 1027. He spent most of his 7-year-long reign waging a bloody and fruitless territorial war with the Byzantine Empire. Early reign. Georgi was born in 998 or, according to a later version of the Georgian Chronicles, in 1002, to King Bagrat III. Upon his father's death on 7 May 1014, he inherited the kingdoms of Abkhazia, Kartli and Kakhety united into a single state of Georgia. As his predecessor, Georgi continued to be titled as King of the Abkhazians and Georgians. Contemporary sources, however, frequently omitted one of the two components of this title when abbreviating it. The new sovereign's young age was immediately exploited by the great nobles, who had been suppressed under the heavy hand of Bagrat. Around the same year, the easternmost provinces of Kakhety and Hereta, not easily acquired by Bagrat, staged a revolt and reinstated their own government under Kaviri III, who also incorporated a portion of the neighboring Aran, allowing him to claim the title of King of the Kakhetians and Iranians. Georgi was unable to prevent the move and sought an alliance with this kingdom, rather than attempting to reincorporate it into the Georgian state, thus leaving a long-standing claim to Kakhety and Hereta to his successors. War and peace with Byzantium. The major political and military event during Georgi's reign, a war against the Byzantine Empire, had its roots back to the 990s. When the Georgian prince David III Kuropalats, following his abortive rebellion against Emperor Basil II, had to agree to cede his extensive possessions in Tau and the neighboring lands to the emperor on his death. All the efforts by David's stepson and Georgi's father, Bagrat III, to prevent these territories from being annexed to the empire went in vain. Young and ambitious, Georgi launched a campaign to restore the Kuropalats' succession to Georgia and occupied Tau in 1015 to 1016. He also entered in an alliance with the Fatimid Caliph of Egypt, al-Hakim, that put Basil in a difficult situation, forcing him to refrain from an acute response to Georgi's offensive. Beyond that, the Byzantines were at that time involved in a relentless war with the Bulgar Empire, limiting their actions to the west. But as soon as Bulgaria was conquered, and al-Hakim was no more alive, Basil led his army against Georgia. An exhausting war lasted for 2 years, and ended in a decisive Byzantine victory, forcing Georgi to agree to a peace treaty, in which he had not only to abandon his claims to Tau, but to surrender several of his southwestern possessions to Basil, and to give his 3-year-old son, Bagrat, as hostage. Following the peace treaty, Constantinople was visited by Catholicos Patriarch Melchizedek I of Georgia, who gained Byzantine financial aid for the construction of Svetitskuvili, a major Orthodox cathedral in the eastern Georgian town of Mtsk. Afterwards, Basil kept the peace with Georgia, permitting Prince Bagrat to return home 2 years later. But the new emperor, Constantine VIII, who succeeded upon the death of Basil, decided to bring Bagrat back to Constantinople. However, the imperial courier could not overtake the prince. He was already in the Georgian possessions. The Byzantine-Georgian relations subsequently deteriorated, particularly after a conspiracy, organized by Nikephoros Komnenos, the Capano of Vaspurakan, and allegedly involving Georgi I, was brought to light. Georgi was evidently preparing to take revenge for his defeat, but he died suddenly in Trialeta on 16 August 1027. He was buried in the Bagratic Cathedral in his capital Kutaisi. A recently discovered grave, presumably robbed in the 19th century, is proposed to have belonged to Georgi I family. Georgi I was married twice, first to the Armenian princess Mariam of Vaspurakan, with whom he had a son called Bagrat and daughters. Garanduct, Martyr, and Cater, and second to Aldi of Alania, who gave birth to a son, Dimitri. In literature, the most important representation of Georgii in historical fiction is probably in Constantine Gamsakherdia's magnum opus, The Hand of the Great Master. The author has often noted that he has been deeply interested in George's character and historical figure for a long time, as well as his reign full of turmoil and turbulence. In the story, the king is portrayed as a philanderer who enjoys feasting in low-class taverns with his comrades disguised as random peasants. The author seems to be emphasizing on the king's human, fleshly wishes and desires despite his position on the social ladder, such as lust, love, loathing and compassion.